It's important that as we develop and grow as human communities, that we really think carefully about all the little things that we do and how we go about that development.
That's Jessica Schultz, the manager of OceanWise's Howe Sound Research and Conservation Team. For more than 20 years, the team has been monitoring and collecting information about the health and wellness of Howe Sound.
We're at the stage where we know what questions are important to start asking and where to start focusing our attention, which is really important. It's an exciting time in Howe Sound right now because while there is a lot of threats from industrial and residential development, there's also a strong sense of stewardship in the area, lots of citizen science, lots of growing interest in learning how we can come together in different ways of governance to address these problems in a way that brings everybody to the table. And that's challenging, but I think we're right at the precipice where we have the opportunity to set an example of how we can manage this type of development.
Ocean Watch recently released its report card on Howe Sound. It covers what we know, where there continue to be gaps in our understanding, and what are the impacts of urban and industrial development on the fjord. For these reasons, we invited Andrew Day of the Coastal Ocean Research Institute to join us for a conversation that matters about Howe Sound.
Conversations That Matter is a partner program for the Centre for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
Andrew Day, welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Howe Sound, we were out yesterday on one of your vessels,
yes,
the Rudy Ann,
yeah.
For a very generous supporter of not only the aquarium but also the Centre for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University.
Fabulous guy.
Extraordinary guy.
Yeah.
And he has a tremendous commitment to making sure that the world that this place that we call home, remains habitable and sustainable. But, you know, we were out in Howe Sound because you're focusing, or you've been researching Howe Sound for a number of decades now, but you just released your report on the health of Howe Sound. How are we doing there?
Well, I think the general, the soundbite is showing signs of recovery.
Yeah.
Still lots of issues and a lot of unknowns.
That's the soundbite.
That's the soundbite.
Good thing that we're not in the soundbite business, because I think that there's a lot more at work here than just that.
Yeah.
We've got industrial development that's there. There's proposed industrial development. There's still the cleanup of Britannia Beach.
That's right, yeah.
And then we've got encroaching urban development and greater marine use.
That's right.
How do all of these things start to affect the well-being of, you know, a precious little waterway ecosystem that we, you know, affectionately know as Howe Sound?
Yeah, and well, that is the question of the millennium. And not just for Howe Sound. I mean, we chose Howe Sound because it's I think, exemplary of areas around the world that are close to urban centers, have, you know, a lot of traffic, a lot of growth, a lot of industrial impact, but still have some wilderness values. I mean, you can go to areas of Howe Sound and, you know, it's incredible, right? It's beautiful, it's rich, you wouldn't know that around the corner, you know, millions of people. So, so that is the question, and you know, there's layers to that question in terms of how do we understand just the impact of one development? How do we understand the impact of 15%? I don't know if you know this, 15% increase in population in Squamish, for instance, over the last 5 years. But then, in addition to those, how do we look at the cumulative impact? When you add all those things together, what does that mean for salmon, eagles, whales, plankton, the little, you know, the little creatures?
The sea lions that we saw yesterday.
You know, and I think the interesting thing, the reason we did this report was nobody's looking at that bigger picture. Every government agency has their jurisdiction, you know, municipalities have their areas, everyone's got their box that they're in. There's nobody responsible for what, how does this all fit together? So that's why we did the report.
And then what could be the overall strategy to ensure that we maintain the best possible health?
That's right. And how do different people and organizations fit into that collective strategy? Because these are clearly all issues and problems that come from multiple sources. They're only going to be solved by multiple sources, for sure.
You mentioned that the population of Squamish has increased dramatically. So has Whistler, which just is upriver.
Yeah.
So it's contributing as well as
Right.
to input that goes down into the ocean.
That's right.
But then you take a look along that entire sea to sky, beautiful highway. There's far more homes along there than you would know when you drive the highway.
That's right.
What are the pressures that kind of urban development start to put on Howe Sound? What are the things that they're starting to leach into the water?
Yeah, so we have things that we know about, like wastewater. So, you drive your car, a little bit of oil leaks out, a little bit of gas, whatever, that's all going into the stormwater system, and it's all, everything flows downstream, right? So there's those kinds of pressures. There's, people, you dump some paint down the sink, or you liquid drain, or this or that. There's chemicals that end up in the system.
Prescription medicine that you go
prescription medicine. That's right. We're all peeing out our estrogen or this or that. The list sort of goes on. Everything that goes down the drain, every time you flush your toilet, it's going somewhere, right? There's some treatment in some areas there's not. But that treatment doesn't necessarily take anything out. And we've got new emerging threats like plastics and microplastics.
Yeah.
So this is this is the humans as rats in the cage sort of thing. After a while, you get, they're choking on their own garbage. Well, I just read a recent study. 83% of water sampled in a number of countries around the world has microplastic particles in it. Drinking water drinking.
Yeah.
In the U.S., that was 94.5% has microplastic particles. That, want some water?
Well, I try to drink out of glasses, and I try to, my sports bottle was made out of glass, not out of plastic. Because I'm aware of the fact that, it's not sitting there in a clump. It winds up being those microbeads. And I think this has probably been one of the most interesting sort of new understandings of what plastic in the water really is all about.
Yeah, and we could have we could talk for 20 minutes about plastic alone. There's large, chunks of plastic that get into fish and whales and stuff, and they choke and die. Plastic bags that turtles think are jellyfish and
suffocate on.
There's smaller microbeads which are put in cosmetics and those sorts of things. That's now been banned in Canada and is being moved into place. And then there's microfibers, which are every time you wash your clothes, that's going into the laundry. It's
little
just
pieces flake
tiny
off.
little fibers, right?
Yeah.
Or microplastics, where you get the larger pieces breaking down into small bits. Couple problems with that. One is they tend to carry contaminants and toxins and then transfer those.
Would they adhere to them? And
they
then
adhere to them, and then they
Wow.
So the point is, not to get all, oh my God.
Yeah.
But the point is, humans have an incredible amount of impact on them. Light is another one, right? You really start messing with the natural cycles of birds and bees and other creatures that depend on light when your lights are on all the time. Or fish when they can't mate, the same triggers if there's lights on the water all the time. Noise is another one. Anyway, but
that goes down into the food chain.
And it all goes, and then it comes back. And this is the point I think is really interesting for people to realize is, I think we're starting to realize, there's a lot more environmental consciousness. We're starting to realize that humans have an impact on the environment. We keep developing. Every time we develop, we're adding to that. What we're starting to see now is, just as the water cycle brings, evaporation and clouds and comes back, we're starting to see, we're eating fish, we're drinking water, we benefit. We take every second breath we take comes from the ocean.
So what's
every
going
second
in
breath.
every second breath?
Yeah. And so if we start choking the microorganisms that create that, right, and in the same way if we chop down all the trees that are the lungs of the earth, we're not going to be able to breathe. You know, we're going to be drinking, you know, what we think is pure water. It's carrying toxins. The food we eat, you know, is going to be carrying things. And, you know, at a certain point where it's in water, you can't, like, clean. You're not going to be able to make everything in a lab that's totally clean, right? So we gotta get with it and start getting organized about having a you know, really thinking about what we put in and cleaning up what we've done.
And when you say we, you mean each and every single one of us. It's not like we're pointing the finger at government or some major company, and they all play a role, but so do we as individuals.
Oh yeah. I think the days of, you know, the finger pointing are so far done. As I said, you know, these are problems that are so collective in nature now that it's going to take a collective effort to fix them. And certainly there's, you know, larger polluters. Governments have a significant role over certain things, and you know, but as individuals, that's where change really gathers momentum, whether it's through changing habits or advocacy or conducting science, getting involved, whatever.
Does Howe sound like the canary in the coal mine? Does it give us a sense of how well we're doing here on the coast of British Columbia?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'd say canary in the coal mine, because I think everywhere is the canary in the coal mine now.
Okay.
I think doing the report there was a way of illuminating much broader trends. And you know, it's, as I said, we chose it because it's kind of uniquely positioned. It has elements of urban development and that, but it then also has some very remote, rugged elements, and that's what the BC coast is, right? It's you know, some urban centers, but a lot of wild areas too.
So one of the things that I'm interested in, because we had about a year and a half ago, we had Brian Riddell from the Pacific Salmon Foundation in to talk about what was happening to Chinook and Coho in the Salish Sea, you know, with his marine survival project there. What do we know about Chinook and Coho, you know, health within Howe Sound?
Sure. So one thing we did is we looked back. You know, we tried to understand status and trends of different things, and so we looked at history. We looked at you know, records and statistics. We also looked at news articles and all kinds of things. One thing that's, you know, I don't know if a lot of your watchers will know, but you know, there was a derby in Howe Sound, right?
Not the Vancouver Sun Derby. Yes, that's
Sun
right.
Derby. Not that long ago, a couple decades ago, 3,000 to 4,000 boats out there. You know, 2-3 days. Like, I don't know how many fish you catch. I mean,
they were big fish.
And these are big fish.
Yeah.
And so we've seen the same trend. There's been kind of a spike in like some pink salmon for a little bit. Overall, the numbers are low. It's not just the low numbers that are a concern. It's the flesh size, the length, the size. The big Thais, you know, we've lost that genetic pool to a large degree, and you know. I think there's still some great fishing opportunities and all that sort of thing, but we're really depleting the genetic makeup of those stocks.
You know, when I saw the number of sea lions that we got to, you know, they're enjoyable to watch as they're bathing on the sun and into the water and whatnot. I started thinking, well, it seems like that population in Howe Sound to me is growing, which would be an indication that there's a greater sort of food source there for them. But still, it's not what it was, you know, as you say, you go back 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about the southern resident killer whales as an example.
Yes.
Right? We're down to 79 individuals, and that's, you know, historically they used to be shot as a nuisance.
Right.
And then they were...
And you would see them in Howe Sound regularly.
And you would see them in Howe. And there was a resident, this is you know, one of the things that I was amazed to find, and there was a million things I was amazed to learn about. There was a resident humpback whale population in Strait of Georgia and Howe Sound. You know, over 100 individuals. That population was wiped out essentially in a year. There was two whaling things. So Kate's family used to run whale watching trips out of Prospect Point, you know, one of the first sort of whale watch expeditions, and they tried to fight it, but you know, basically a whaling company came in and slaughtered those populations. So, you know, that's the kind of situation where what was the ecosystem like? How much abundance of life would have had to be there to support that many whales?
Right.
And in what way were they creating the ecosystem when they were pooping? You know, that's fertilizing the system, right? So, you know, we've just really restructured what was there, and so we're seeing the signs of recovery, seeing some humpbacks come back. We're seeing, you know, we got to keep going in that direction.
One of the interesting things that I noted was the impact that logging, especially in the formation of log booms, and of course, you know, when you have those sorting yards and collection areas, you get the bark that drops off, and it has a devastating impact on eelgrass.
Sure, it just coats the bottom, basically, yeah.
And the value of eelgrass is extraordinary. Like, how can you have an abundant and robust salmon population if you don't have eelgrass?
Yeah,
which seems like an odd sort of connection. But you know, when I read that, I went, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah, I can't remember the exact number. It's something like 70-80% of the species that are fished commercially in British Columbia that we enjoy, are incredible seafood, spend a significant portion of their life in eelgrass.
As they come out of the river from when they
or they come in, you know, blackcod will come in from the depths, and halibut and crabs, Dungeness crabs, etc. I mean, eelgrass is like, it is the nursery grounds. So you're not just wiping out a little bit of grass. You're basically wiping out the production areas that that lead to the large populations of other species that we enjoy.
Now, people would argue that the amount of logging activity in the area is down, and so therefore it's better. But one of the things I noted is that there's more and more like private docks along the shoreline, which have a similar kind of impact.
Yeah, or people's anchors. I mean, more people on those anchors, they throw their anchor down, it drags along, it's just chewing up the eelgrass. Right. There's lots of the shade from the docks will prevent eelgrass from going or growing, or if there's pollutants in the water, it'll cause a disease on the eelgrass. Anyway, you know, lots of
Britannia Mine, of course, has been there for a long time, and there's been remedial work going on there. How are we doing on sort of getting ahead of the contamination that was leaching out of that mine for so many years? And is it bringing some benefits at this point?
Well, for sure. I mean, that was the most polluted, you know, mine site in the world for a period of time, and they've put a huge, I mean, unbelievable amount of government resources, our public resources, into trying to fix it. So what we found was still some leaching of metals from an unknown source, but you know, by and large, that's again a sign of recovery, or of a huge improvement over what it was, which was, you know, devastating.
Literally across the sound from there, there was wood fiber, the pulp mill.
That's right.
Which isn't there any longer, and so that must be also giving a little bit of relief to that area as well.
Absolutely, same thing. You know, so we've stopped the introduction of different chemicals in. We're still seeing some of those chemicals in crabs, and so this is the, you know, I think this is the, you know, the place we have to come to is, you know, life doesn't give you the opportunity to press the reset button. Right. We've wiped out the genetic material for that humpback whale population. You know, one thing your watchers would be interested to know is there used to be a million ulakan up in the Squamish River. So ulakan are these candlefish. They're these small, very oily fish. So you think about that, like, what is the economic value, let alone the cultural value and the social value and the ecological value? Because those fish are exactly what, you know, the most nutrient-rich kind of fish, high oil content for salmon, for whales. But this is economic value. I mean, the world is starving for fish oil now. We can't, you know, and so...
And they were a big part of First Nations culture as well.
A huge part of, well, you can imagine, right? I mean, your winter fat, your oil and fat, there's what our brains are made of and everything else. So, you know, those are gone. We've lost some other things. But, you know, to the extent that we can stop that thinking and that trend and those practices, nature will rebound. We're not going to get a million. I mean, there's some things we've just lost.
Yeah.
We've lost them.
It's
you know,
unfortunate.
it's tragic.
Yeah.
However, that's done. The question is now: are we going to keep doing that? Are we going to keep putting the singular and the cumulative pressure on these species and these habitats so that they blink out? Or are we going to figure out ways to continue to have a quality of life that we enjoy, to see economic development, etc., but doing that in harmony with and reconciled with these species? And that is absolutely the fundamental challenge of this century for humans.
I had an interesting conversation with Ross Beatty, who is
Ross is a great, good, like Rudy, fantastic supporter of.
Just so devoted to the environment. Yeah. And he says, and I know that sounds odd considering that I make my living in the mining sector. Yeah. He said, but we live at that cross section between modern living and needing to be able to be as environmentally aware of what the impact of that is as we move forward. And so every decision that we make has to say, I want to move forward and protect our way of life, but at the same time I want to protect the environment in which we're enjoying that life.
And we can do that. My thing is like solution oriented, right? I enjoy science, I enjoy understanding things, but I want to solve problems. Well, when you put pilings down or you build something, there is no reason why that has to be a net negative impact. You can build them and design them so that they create fish habitat.
Well, we've demonstrated that we have the ability to muster up the intellectual capabilities that are needed or requirements that are needed to face virtually every challenge that we're presented with. And so by being aware of what's happening in our local environments, so close to a major urban development, I applaud you for what you're doing and for reminding us how important it is. Thank you very much for coming in and doing
Stuart,
this.
I appreciate it. You can see the report at oceanwatch.ca. I think the coolest thing, I know we're out of time, the coolest thing is the action plan that we put in there. The Community Forum of Local Governments First Nations have picked that up. They've put in place a task force and they're going for it. They're saying, we want to really do something about this.